Appreciate that. All right, everybody. Well, thanks for taking the time out of the day to spend some time with us to talk about what's likely an upcoming audit concern on your end around the e-skimming controls for PCI compliance. I'm going to go through the session here and give you a little bit of background, hopefully help you make a case internally around the need to focus on this by highlighting some of the some of the ways that e-skimming has really sort of plagued the payments community and contributing to the broader issue of fraud in our industry. I'm going to walk you through some tools that you can use to get moving and offer some help as we go along in the session. Feel free to ask questions as we go along. I will try and address them as we're talking, or at minimum, we'll try and get to them at the back end. And we will record the session and make it available to you within about 24 hours. A team member of ours will follow up, drop a line with the link, and then ask if there's anything else that you might need help with that we didn't address today. So let's get started without further ado. I wanted to give just a little bit of background on Source Defense so you know who we are and the way we look at the world and how we approach this problem and sort of like what is the general makeup of our company in terms of our approach to this community. We are an InfoSec firm. We've been in the security space and primarily in this focus on e-skimming controls for the better part of about 9 years now. We really are focused on protecting data at the point of capture, which is really what e-skimming security is all about. You may have heard, the phrase, and I'm sure you know them, focusing on protecting data in transit, data at rest. Data at capture is now a new battleground and is increasingly become the favorite spot for cyber criminals to operate. And so we'll talk a little bit about, that and what this whole e-skimming focus is and how this all works as we go through the session. But, we're a web security firm. We are a firm that prides itself in helping our clients drive broader innovation in their web environments and in their e-commerce environments. We are definitely square in the third-party risk management category. And if you, have a GRC, a governance risk compliance mindset, or a third-party risk management mindset inside your organization, I think it's good to frame us as a component of that strategy, and this whole problem as a component of that strategy to help drive more support inside the organization should you be getting any headwinds or feel any reluctance, to take this and do something about it, with some urgency. We are primarily focused on protecting data and securing against e-skimming attacks. But there's some bleed over into data privacy and other forms of compliance. One thing that's not really well known to people, but it's becoming a little bit more of an eye opener, is that even in an environment where you are not looking at an attack, the way that we've architected our websites with the plugin of all these third-party integrations, it actually leads to data leakage, inadvertent data leakage of very sensitive and privacy protected information that has an impact on GDPR, has an impact on HIPAA, on FFIEC, and other forms of compliance. And so when you think about this problem and you think about it driving a solution to it, another interesting way, to I think get support from the organization is to talk about sort of the two birds, one stone nature. If you control the third-party integrations that are on your website and prevent against e-skimming, you're also going to, address the behaviors of those integrations, and you're going to prevent the type of access to that sensitive information that could get you in trouble with any one of those other compliance regimes. On the way of background in terms of our focus on the community, we are a PCI PPO. That means we're a principal participating organization. We invest heavily into our relationship with the PCI Council. I actually sit on the board of advisors for the 2025 to 2027 sessions. And you'll see us at all PCI related events. We were just in North America, we'll be at Europe. You will have found us, participating in multiple of the various different task forces that are out there, like the e-commerce task force and the small merchant task force. We really are the pioneer in this space, but we have taken a lot of time to really be a pioneer in helping educate, the broader PCI community around the problem. We've got a security first focus. And by that, what I mean is we protect against the threat. That's our primary focus. It's not about compliance or checkbox compliance. As the first thought, it's about the underlying issue of what we're trying to do, stop this type of data theft. We really are protecting the global payments ecosystem. We have clients with the card brands, with merchant acquirers. Some of the larger merchant acquirers have standardized around our technology, and are actually using us to roll out support for the level 4 community. We support PSPs. We have relationships with all the world's QSACs, and with hundreds and hundreds of QSAs themselves. We've got 1,000 plus of the world's largest brands that rely on us. And one number that we're really, really proud of is that we are protecting currently 20 billion transactions on an annual basis. So that's sort of like the background on us. In terms of our relationship to the community, we have a bunch of free tools that I really want to make sure you guys can take advantage of. We can help you with scoping support, so understanding, what's in, what's out of scope, and sort of looking at your environment, against the DSS and the requirements that are there. We offer a bunch of advice, and I'll talk through some of this on building versus procurement, and some of the pitfalls that I think you really need to be aware of if you've approached this with a homegrown DIY kind of solution set, around the gaps in the security process and the gaps in the compliance process that exist behind some of the solutions that are even called out in the DSS. We're happy to come in and provide no charge education and ask me anything sessions. Really have a sit down with the team and help you guys put together a project around these things. We've got a pre-project website assessment tool that you can avail yourself of. It'll actually give you a full look into your environment and help you sort of like scope out and look at everything you need to tackle. We probably know your QSA, by first name. And if not, we know someone inside their organization. We do a lot of group working sessions with QSAs, and we've got a rapid action plan that can help you get this problem solved in 30 days or less. I want to take a break for a second because I needed to have a quick drink of water. And I was going to set this up as a poll, but I was worried maybe it might be sensitive and you wouldn't want everybody seeing your responses. I have a few questions. You can chat to me the answers if you so wish. The first, really is, have you implemented an e-skimming solution, or e-skimming security solution, or a compliance solution for 643 and 11.6.1, however you want to sort of like frame that thought process. Have you? Yes. Have you? No. Do you not know? My assumption is you probably have not, and that's why you're here. But I wanted to throw that first one out there. If you have not, one of the reasons I'm asking is you really need to get serious about that. You've got, not very long, probably before your next report of compliance or attestation is due, or your SAQ is due. And you're going to be non-compliant if you don't have a solution in place. So do you have one? Don't you have one? If you feel like answering that question, just chat it to me. Okay. The other question that I have, or at least for you to be thinking about, if you don't want to answer, it's fine, but what is the date of your next ROC or your AOC or your SAC? It's got to be coming up. And you need to be mindful of the fact that the due date for these controls was April 1st of this year. So you've basically been non-compliant for the last 6 months if you don't have a solution in place. And one of the really important things to understand, if you do use a QSA, we've had so many relationships and so many conversations with these folks. We know what they're looking for in terms of validating controls being in place. They're not going to accept that you got something in place last night and trust us. We've done all the things that are required, under the DSS in terms of, the specific 643 and 11.6.1. They are going to look for proof that you have controls in place, that those controls have been in place for quite some time, that there are documented processes around the management of this process, a management of compliance in an ongoing capacity. They're going to look for logs that show that you have the ability to, detect at minimum and to alert on any potential malicious behavior. And they're going to expect, you to come to the table with that documentation. So you got to get moving now. Like waiting is a problem, for compliance, because of the way the QSAs are going to look at and require proof. I'll get into more of the bigger concern as to, why waiting is a bad idea, in the next few slides. But I wanted to, kind of put that out there and ask that question. The other question I have, okay, if you don't have a solution implemented and, your rock is coming, within the next 90 days or whatever, do you have a project plan in place? No, or you're just getting started, or yeah, you got a plan, but you got to get moving on it. There are ways to make this happen. We've helped clients in an overnight capacity address the problem. And so it doesn't have to be like your typical, 120 to, 6 month long, 120 day to 6 month long kind of process to get this in place. It's not that daunting of a task. It sounds like a big deal, but it can really be compartmentalized and addressed very rapidly. Our solution, for example, just deploys us a couple of lines of code. And so we can have it actually implemented as fast as, an hour from now, if it goes that fast. Most of what takes the time is a little bit of testing. There's not a lot to test. Mostly it's your web dev and your ecom people, looking for, just proof that, the site's going to continue to function, with these types of controls in place. We've done it for 1,000 plus, the world's largest brands. That testing process is usually like 24 to 48 hours. And then the rest of it is contracting. So you can really get moving fast on this. So, if you are in need to get something going right away, we can help you with a 30-day project plan on that. And it can go as fast as, like I said, hours or two. If you don't know who to get in touch with, you're in the compliance space, but, is it IT? Is it security? It's usually a combination of people, depending upon the complexity and the sophistication of your environment. We can help you find the right people inside your organization to get this rolling with. I think that the common theme that I would offer is Source Defense is here to help. And we, enjoy the relationships that we do in the industry because of that sort of focus on being helpful. So my name is Steve, introduced that at the front end. My email is super easy. It's just steve@sourcedefense.com. I enjoy engaging with people and helping answer questions and helping walk through stuff. So feel free to reach out to me, steve@sourcedefense.com. Should you have any questions, and need any help getting anything moving against some of the stuff that I've just talked about. Okay. I want to talk about why e-skimming is such a concern at this point in time and why the DSS has caught up, to the threat landscape, with the 2022 edition of these controls as best practices, and now with the deadline, like I said, is April 1st, right? It's because of its massive role in fraud. And what we're in the game of doing, right, is driving fraud out of the payments ecosystem, and obviously protecting the brands that we serve and the consumers, that power them, right? And so when you think about like delay and you think about why we got to do this, it's not just to check a compliance box. It's to address sort of where the threat has evolved to, in the course of, say, the last 10 years. Okay. When, chip and pin or card not present, or I'm sorry, card present became more of a hardened environment, everything shift from the cybercrime side of things into card not present or e-commerce transactions, online transactions. Literally like almost overnight, in response to sort of like the final like big push, for the liability shift, you saw the dawn of mage card attacks. They're e-skimming attacks, right? That's just a different name to call e-skimming. And it's just actually the name of a group that threat researchers called Mage Cart because they were beating the hell out of the Magento e-commerce platform, okay? Or Adobe Commerce as it is now. Bad guys evolve. Bad guys are financially motivated. Bad guys see profit where we see cost. And they basically said it's the wild, wild west. They've done all this work to harden, data in transit, data at rest. We're just going to steal it. based on the way that the web works, while people are actually in the transaction or in the shopping cart process. Um, there have been a ton of ease skimming attacks. Some high profile, lots that aren't high profile. The level two or the level three, the mid-size, merchant, or even the level four, getting caught up in these types of attacks in mass. The high profile attacks that, really popped into the news sphere, are back in about 2018 is when we first started seeing that. Most mage card or most e-skimming attacks will go undetected. They will go undetected for like a year or more. Okay. I think the average is like 18 months. And that's because there aren't controls in place writ large across the industry at this point in time. So if we had more sensors and we had more ability to see the problem and we actually controlled and monitored what was going on, across the ecosystem, you would see, far more disclosures of these types of breaches. I think as we move forward and we get more into the adoption of the controls around 643 and 11.6.1, you'll see more empirical data about the volume of these types of attacks. But suffice to say, they're happening all the time. And they have impact not just on sort of the cost of the data breach, but in the one case of a major airline that was hacked in 2018, they also suffered a massive GDPR fine because they weren't keeping the data safe. And so there are bleed overs, right? The financial impact of these attacks to your organization could be very significant. Should you be a multinational or a retailer, and as we all really mostly are in the e-commerce space, where you're selling around the world. The news kind of cooled off on it. Ransomware and those types of supply chain attacks, really stole some of the spotlight. But suffice to say, the way the DSS reflects the world is it's a laggard type of control framework because it's in response to the evolution of things, right? So compliance is always sort of a couple of years behind the threat, because it takes some time to recognize the threat, to work with the community, to address and scope out what the controls are going to look like, et cetera, et cetera. So when the DSS introed these controls in 2022, it was in response to multiple years of blood loss. And that blood loss continues to this day. In fact, we're seeing, through empirical research that the vast majority of cards that are stolen and identity theft is coming from the CNP environment or from the e-commerce environment. One thing that is happening that's interesting is at the same time as the bad guy is pacing up his attacks, they're responding to what the DSS has to say. We've seen a change in threat behavior designed to, sort of bypass or, bifurcate the controls that are outlined in the DSS. Bad guys read too. And they listen to and they come to our conferences and they understand what people's mentalities are and they find ways to continue to innovate. If you have to grab somebody by the collar inside your organization and say, we got to do something about this e-skimming thing, talk to them about fraud, the source of fraud, the cost of fraud inside your organization, and the cost of fraud writ large around the world. They're saying at this point in time, by 2028, we're going to see nearly $100 billion in fraud loss through e-commerce. And, there's all sorts of controls that we invest in, that are sort of like post theft of card data, where we're trying to, drive down fraud and we have fraud prevention capabilities and stuff in case, but we're overlooking that e-skimming is effectively the data collection foundation that allows for fraud schemes to happen. That 91 billion in e-commerce fraud, starts somewhere, right? And where does it start? It starts with the theft of data, transaction manipulation at the point of attack, or hijacking and altering, payment data during the checkout process. It has to do with account takeover. It has to do with synthetic identity development. It is the root of our problem stems from, the loss of card data in the first place. And so, grab them by the shirt collar and tell them we got to do something about this. We can't just leave it open anymore. Again, I've been in security for a long time. It's not just about compliance. Compliance is an afterthought. It should be about the security focus underlying the compliance requirement. And the reason that it's there is because of how significant of a threat this actually is. To give you a little bit of a primer, if you don't have it, on how these attacks work, it's because of all the plugins and all the services that we're running on our websites. Okay. When you look at your website, it's JavaScript. And JavaScript is a very powerful coding language, but it's also very wide open. And it is, a type of code that like has no native security controls and, has the ability to pretty much do anything it wants, while running. And so, JavaScript is the problem. Our websites are comprised of JavaScript. And the problem is it's not your JavaScript. It's, script that has been, sourced by, an amalgam of third parties. We look at, websites and we can tell you, based on the brands that we serve and research that we've done out there, roughly 82% of the code running on your, however many millions of sessions that you're serving up to your consumers, right? Is not yours. It is coming from Meta, or it's coming from Google Analytics, or it's coming from, increasingly like, all the AI tech that's out there. It's coming from, any number of video players, audio, all the types of things that we need to serve up a good experience for our consumers is the problem, right? When this stuff is running, it's really powerful. In most native cases, it's doing things that, almost perform and behave somewhat like malware, really lowers the bar for the bad guy. When they don't really have to write their own code, they just have to hijack the code that's there to serve their illicit purposes versus the benign purposes that it's designed for in the first place. So these scripts, when they're running on your site, right, they're doing, things to track website behavior, to look at, and record keystrokes, to respond to, the consumer when they're on the site, to be reactive and responsive, to add content, to put new images in place, serve up video, serve form fields, to redirect visitors to other parts of the site. All of that, right, is bad stuff that bad guys want to do for their own purposes. Hoarding and stealing and scraping data, right? Skimming the data out of there. Taking a user and hijacking the consumer process so that they think that they're actually doing business with you, but they're giving in and they're serving in the command and control of the adversary. Taking your page and offering up content that shouldn't be there, not to deface, but just to trick the consumer. All of those are things that bad guys do when they get a hold of and compromise the script that's running from those third parties. So you got to focus on this e-skimming thing. It's all about third parties. That's what I said up front. It's about the third party risk management end of things. There's a fraud concern. There's money to be lost. There are, massive, implications, to your organization, both from a fines and judgments perspective, as well as just overall brand damage. What we hear from the card associations in the backdoor meetings that we're in is that 7 out of 8 fraud investigations now involve e-skimming. And that, is a problem in and of itself, but again, has that sort of, broader roll through the ecosystem. It helps, for fraud amplification, and it damages, to the tune of 10 to 50 times the original transaction value, in terms of what the cost is. Like looking at the problem as it relates to sort of where we all suffer as a result, obviously, first and foremost, it's the consumer. The identity theft aspect of things, can't be understated. We have a responsibility to protect them. I myself, as maybe you have as well, my identity has been compromised like 11 times over the course of the last, 11 years. It's like, every time I turn around, one of the brands that I've done business with somewhere has suffered a breach. We got to stop that. We got to stop the consumer harm. We got to stop, sort of letting, the identities of ourselves and our loved ones, be compromised. And so, we got to focus on this problem. Obviously, as a merchant, you face a lot of loss, right? The chargeback number, I think, is something to the effect of like $3.50 for every $1 fraud. It's a big problem. There's big loss, and it damages the bottom line. And, frankly, it like jeopardizes, the global economy and, for you as an individual, like, never good if your company suffers a breach because there's usually a lot of financial loss, behind it that could lead to, even, downturn in the organization itself. The acquirers have problems with liability and compliance. The issuer, it's a battle of who, is going to end up, suffering the expense of the fraud. In some cases, I think in card present environment, typically falls on the merchant or I'm sorry, on the issuer in the card not present or the e-commerce environment. It's largely going to be directed at the merchant. But the cost there, to the banks is big. The cost of the merchants is big. The cost of the consumer, is really, 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 really important. And so, the associations have taken it seriously. The DSS has taken it seriously. Visa's been warning about, getting this problem solved for quite some time. They continue to provide good threat research around it in their biannual threat reports. So too does MasterCard with the Recorded Future Group that produces a lot of content, a lot of empirical data around the subject. Again, I'm offering these things up as sources that you can consult should you need to, shake your organization into action. Visa is basically saying the bad guys are targeting this supply chain, these third-party service integrators, and you got to do something about it. And that's why the DSS says, okay, look, we got to start taking this seriously. What is the composition of our website? What's running there, right? Just an inventory and an understanding of like, okay, how many plugins do we have and what are they and what are their design purpose and what are the behaviors of those plugins and who owns it? And, are these reputable, third parties that we've integrated? Are they fly-by-night companies with poor security? What is it? Why is it there? And should it be there or does it have a legitimate business purpose is first part of what, you're being asked to do, with the new controls, inventory it, justify its existence, have an open dialogue inside your organization so that you keep control of what's already there, and then you have a process to decide what more to put there, where you're thinking about the risk introduced into the ecosystem as a result. It's shocking to me, but maybe it's not that shocking, in general, because it's just sort of part of human nature and it's part of, I think the hygienic issue behind security. But we'll come into an environment, a new environment, and people will be like completely floored by the initial assessment of what's running on their site. We don't work with that company. Why are they there? In a lot of cases, it's legacy stuff that was part of the composition of the website from a past regime, and nobody cleaned it up. And so in a lot of cases, you've got services that are running that are no longer supported. They've been end of life, so that means there's no patches coming for them, or there's stuff running that is super outdated in terms of the patches and such. Just getting to that hygienic process is a big change for all of us. And having GRC involved and having a dialogue between IT, the web, and security and compliance, really is a change. But from there, you've got more onerous things that you need to do. You got to know it's there. You got to justify that it's there. You got to have that documented. But then you've got to be able to watch it and monitor it and ensure that it has not been compromised. And that gets into, sort of like new security policies and new procedures that you need to adopt. In the homegrown kind of sense, we've had lots of people who went out there and they say, well, we'll do this thing with the CSP or the SRI type of approach. It doesn't have any baked in process. It does not have any baked in, what did it do? Where are the alerts going? Who do they get sent to? How are they logged? How is the response handled? Things of that nature. Most clients, of ours, we offer a couple different flavors, but most clients of ours don't want anything to do with that type of process to begin with, right? There's already too many things for you guys to listen to, or at least for the security team to listen to, in the environment, and you don't need more alerts that could either be missed or misunderstood, and that could result in the detection of an attack, but not the thwarting of it. And so our approach, the way we've architected the world, is all about behavioral-based control, is all about prevention first. It's all about set it and forget it and not having a bunch of process. But you can choose whichever way you want to go on that end of things. But just know you got to have a process in place to find out if there's bad stuff happening, to stop it when it happens, and to make sure that the attack is cut off. A little bit on why we had to get into the world of even having skimming controls. We've done a tremendous job with firewalls and with web application firewalls, to really protect the server side of the equation. And there's a lot of JavaScript. So if 82% is, outside, then, 18% of the code is yours, which is first party. And you may have written, these types of services in by, the development teams, whatever. That's pretty well hardened, and it's pretty well hardened, and so you see fewer and fewer first party JavaScript type of attacks. It's all, sort of like in the third party world. There are some misstatements, we believe, in the DSS around, things you should go use. CSP SRI, you've heard me beat up on that a couple times. Just know this. There are approaches that are antiquated in the face of today's attacks. CSP SRI, they're both effectively blacklist, whitelist, fail open, fail close types of approaches. And, that does not reflect the dynamic nature of, either the way script is managed and served, like where there's dynamic scripting in place and you can't create hashes for everything because there is no hash when it changes, sort of like in a real time, kind of fashion. It's got an issue there. And in many cases, it's a false sense of security that's being used because you're just leaving the door open and saying, yes, I trust this service, but it is the trusted service that gets compromised that leads to these types of attacks. So you've got to know a lot about what's going on in this world if you want to get to the underlying security side of it. And so, really focusing on it from a security perspective is what we would advise. So I just want to give a little quick primer on how we work. And then, I'll let you guys ask any questions. We are a solution, as I mentioned. It's got a couple of different ways that we approach it. We've got a detection solution and we've got a protection solution. Should you love alerts and want to create, process around things, we have the ability to, provide full monitoring, scan your properties, inventory all the scripts, let you understand where your sensitive data resides, monitor and alert for, changes that are, anomalous and that indicate malicious behavior, and give you the alerts, and you can go and you can build and run and build your own process all around that. Again, we have a protection first approach. It's a couple lines of code. We basically sandbox the JavaScript. So these third parties that are running on your site, they're still running, but we're, putting them in a secure environment and we're controlling their behavior. We give you policy-based recommendations and tell you, do allow this type of, behavior. Don't allow that. Isolate out, this type of data and these sensitive fields and things of that nature. And then we block from the beginning because we see a change in behavior. When we do indicate a change in behavior, we don't let it happen. We sort of inoculate it from the consumer environment. The attempt is still made, and so that gives you all the log data and the visibility into the type of attack and origins and things of that nature. But the attack itself is detected and defeated automatically. Okay, so that's sort of the source defense approach. I want to jump around. Yeah, we already got into the requirement side of things. If you guys have questions, I definitely want to answer any of them for you. I want to kind of just show you. I don't think I have the action plan. Again, the 30-day action plan, right? That's something I think, Scott, if you haven't already, just throw the link in there. There's another that, if you haven't looked at your website and nobody inside the organization has never done anything with this, we can give you a quick pre-project assessment, run down for you and even give you access to what the compliance dashboard that we built will look like. And we can do that in 24 hours. So from the outside looking in, we can scan your site. We can come back. We can say, here are, the scripts that run on the site, and they've been inventoried, and here they are. And we give you, the number and enumerate and to tell you the type and tell you what the purpose is, define them for you, et cetera. We'll also show you these shadow scripts, which have popped up because they are scripts that are called in by the partners that you work with. And so, a lot of people don't realize that, but like if I use, I'll pick on Meta. There's ad software that they call in. There's analytics software that they call in. There's a supply chain within their supply chain or within your supply chain. And so it's like a, multifaceted sort of like follow the trail that we can give you an understanding on. And we'll show you all this in this dashboard. We'll show you the way to justify and how we've got some AI, driven automatic justification. We'll show you a scan on the web headers, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And so we'll get you really familiar with this. And so if you've not done that, I would definitely say that's a good first step is just ask us to assess the site. And, we can then come in and we can present to you our findings. And then you can have an understanding of, exactly what you've got to do to get your hands around this management. But, now is the time to get moving. The case, should be, well documented to make. You've got to do it. You got to get compliant. And, the real heart of the issue is you don't want to be exposed to these types of attacks. Thank you guys very much. Appreciate you. Have yourself a very nice day. And we will